Hello, friends. This is the Netarts Friends Church podcast. We are Jesus people, Kingdom of God people, welcoming, yearning, sharing. And we're glad you're connecting here with us. We'd love to connect in person as well. If you're inclined to support this podcast or for more information, just hop on over to netartsfriends.org. That's netartsfriends.org. Let's jump into today's sermon. Myra grew up hating school. She didn't hate learning, but she hated the way she felt while she was at school. Her stomach tied itself up in knots. It didn't do that when she was on vacation. But while she was at school, Myra's stomach was angry. And so Myra grew up keeping mostly to herself. She liked the quiet of the library. She liked the fact that it was a place where you knew that people weren't supposed to try to talk to you. She liked the quiet of the kitchen at home. She didn't want to do school sports or some other club. After school every day, she wanted to either steal away to the library and lose herself in a book, or sneak away to the kitchen and try her hand at the next recipe in one of her mom's cookbooks. Myra's mother was dead. She had died from breast cancer when Myra was 5.5, and her dad had remarried when she was 8. Myra became as self-sufficient and responsible of a teenager as just about anyone had ever seen. She did all of her homework, then went directly to the library for an hour or so, maybe stopped by the grocery store on the way home, and then she was cooking and baking, dinner and dessert, nearly every night of the week. Nobody told her to do it. She just did it. Her dad and stepmom had given her their credit card, and she did all the grocery shopping for the family. Nobody asked where the recipes came from, but nearly every meal Myra cooked was out of one of her mom's cookbooks. After dinner every night, Myra went straight up to her room. She closed the door and lost herself in a book. And that was Myra every day. Every day, the routine began while Myra sat in class. She thought and daydreamed about the recipe that she wanted to try that night. And you could say that Myra was thinking about the food, because she was. Half cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of butter. Did she use the last of the oatmeal yet? But at a much deeper level, Myra wasn't just imagining the food that she would make. She was imagining her dad's face and her stepmom's face when they tasted the food that she had made. There was a certain smile, a certain sparkle in the eye, a warmth, an affection, love, deep appreciation that she imagined and daydreamed about. And every night as she made another meal, she daydreamed about receiving that sparkling smile from them. And every night she was disappointed. And it always felt the same, like a gaping hole. It wasn't that they didn't smile. Sometimes they did, and sometimes they even said kind things about how good the food tasted and what a good cook she was. Myra would turn her eyes down and say thank you. But every night when Myra went upstairs, she didn't lose herself in a book because it was fun. She was running away from awful, sad feelings. She had once again longed for the smile, the sparkle, the warmth, the affection, and once again she felt alone. Tomorrow would be another day of her stomach hurting, and school, and dreaming up a recipe, and dreaming of that smile, and then disappointment, running away into her book. She was trying so hard to be self-sufficient, so hard, and her heart was longing for connection, and she was doing the only thing she knew to find that connection, but it all just felt empty and awful. And somehow it never occurred to Myra that the smile and warmth that she imagined on her dad's face or on her stepmom's face wasn't their smile to give. She was imagining a smile that came from some of her earliest memories. She was imagining the smile, the sparkle, the warmth, and affection of her mother. But it wasn't until years later that Myra realized that. Myra graduated. She took some classes at the community college. They were okay. She took a job stocking shelves at the grocery store at night. She didn't want a job around people. She was longing and aching for connection, but her stomach hurt when she was around people. She met a boy who also stocked shelves at night. He was quiet. He had a nice smile. And as things go, Myra married the quiet boy with the nice smile. And children came along. And Myra found herself 7 years later with a screaming child in a high chair throwing applesauce and another child a few years older with a full diaper drawing with a crayon on her mom's cookbook, and her oldest child who she was trying to get to and from preschool on time. She was no longer preparing one meal a day, with hours at school to imagine and plan the meal and dream, and with a break every day for me time at the library and then more me time at the end of the day to get lost in a book. No, it was 3 meals a day plus snacks, laundry, dishes, diapers, plus part-time hours stocking shelves at night. Her quiet boy with the nice smile had transferred to daytime hours at the bakery, but times were tough. She'd never fully explored what it was she was chasing, what she was trying to prove to herself or anyone else with all those meals that she had made as a teenager, or what it was she'd been trying to escape when she lost herself in a book every night. All she knew now was that her heart felt so much pressure. Even if she got everything right, none of it felt like peace. Her mind was fragmented. If she was at home, she was thinking about being at work. If she was at work, she was thinking about being at home. If she was reading to her son, she was thinking about folding the laundry. If she was with her husband, she was thinking about her children. If she was with her children, she was thinking about how little time she got with her husband. And in the background lurked her mom's old cookbooks and that elusive, warm smile. The hope and life that she used to feel when she cracked open her mom's old cookbooks was still there. She still daydreamed about someone giving her that sparkling, warm smile. But often that hope and life felt cracked and brittle and old, like her kids' plastic toys that had sat out in the sun all summer long. She felt increasingly alone. She wanted what she did to matter, but she also ached for her being to matter, and she wondered if she was not worthy of that warm, sparkling smile. She found herself lashing out sometimes at her quiet husband, at her dad, her stepmom when they visited, sometimes at her children, treating them like they were the problem, like they were the ones who needed to change. They needed to be more helpful, more appreciative, better, different. And when she wasn't lashing out, she was running, like a hamster on a treadmill, exhausted, fragmented, trying to do it all, under pressure. One day, completely at the end of her rope, she lost her cool on all of her kids, right there in the library. She was the one breaking the 6-inch voice rule in the library. The wise old librarian could remember when Myra's mother had first brought her to the library. She could remember when Myra's mother had died and how Myra had sat for hours, escaping into books. And the librarian said to Myra, "Myra, I have a house at the beach. You seem like you could use a few days. Would you let me watch your kids for you and give you a break? And so, Myra went to the beach. She brought a few library books, her mom's cookbook, and a bag. It was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. She felt as unhappy as ever. Myra couldn't figure out if she was trying to escape something or chase something. She fell asleep, exhausted, and into a deep dream. In her dream, she was getting ready to bake. The sun was shining into the kitchen, just like when she was little, when she would put her hands in the flour and then clap. Myra had always loved watching the bits of flour dust float across sunbeams. There was someone there in the kitchen with her. Myra felt herself slipping into her familiar pattern, flipping through the cookbook. On the one hand, thinking about ingredients and recipes, but on the other hand, dreaming about that smile, wondering if she was worthy of it, if she might get the sparkling warmth this time. She had just started to reach for the measuring cups when the other person in the room reached out and touched her. Myra, Myra, I see you. I see you. The touch was warm, like the sunlight, but Myra had to get the measuring cups. She had cookies to bake. She reached again, but the voice said, Myra, Myra, I see you. I see you. And for the first time she looked up. She couldn't have said exactly who it was. Her face looked old and wise and timeless. But then she smiled. And Myra would have known that smile anywhere. Warm, the sparkle in the eye, the affection, the love, the deep appreciation. Her heart was immediately in her throat. It was the smile she had been longing for all these years. It was her mother's smile. And yet, the person in the room was even bigger and deeper and older and more alive and more. She was love that is stronger than death. The smiling woman slapped her hands down into the flour and clapped. That was what Myra and her mother had always done before they baked. Clouds of flour dust billowed up in the sun rays, and the woman let out a guffaw of laughter. Myra meant to let out a guffaw of laughter too, but instead what bubbled out of her was a terrible noise, a retch, a vomit of noise, a howl. Myra wanted to laugh, but she couldn't. And that same warm smile began to name, slowly and deliberately, all of the emotions that had always been too big and too much, too overwhelming for Myra. Myra, I see you. Myra, you're anxious. You are afraid. You are fragmented. You are sad. You feel like if you don't keep everything running, everything's gonna fall apart. You feel like you're giving and giving and giving, but you don't have anyone pouring into you. You feel alone. You don't know if anyone cares. You're not upset with Dad, or with your stepmom, or your husband, or your kids. You're upset because you don't know if you're enough. You don't know if anyone is celebrating you. You're upset because nobody can be your mother. You're grieving the life and the love that you never received with your mother. You want to be in two places at once. You want to be with your mother, and you want to be with your father, your husband, your children. You feel guilty. that you want to be two places at once. You feel lost, frustrated, and torn. And with each and every word, an enormous weight fell away from Myra's heart. Then the woman reached out. She took Myra's hands in her hands, and she said with that sparkle in her eye, "Only one thing is needed." And she clapped the flower. Clouds billowed into the sun rays, and her smile shone like the sun, and Myra's smile shone like the sun. And a laugh like she hadn't laughed since she was 4 or 5 years old bubbled up out of her. And they clapped, and they laughed, and they clapped, and they laughed. And eventually the woman looked into Myra's eyes, and she said, "Myra, you were always so concerned that I would love the cookies you made. You paid so much attention to how I responded. But my favorite part of baking with you was never eating the cookies at the end. I didn't care if they were good or bad. My favorite part was clapping the flower with you at the beginning. Myra, you are my favorite flower clapper. Myra, you are dying under the pressure to make cookies that everyone likes, and nobody can give you the smile that you're seeking. Myra, every time you clap the flower, my heart is bursting with joy over you. Every time I am smiling, I don't need you to make anything, Myra. Just clap the flower. Clap the flower with Dad. Clap the flower with your husband. Clap the flower with your children. Don't beat yourself up about years gone by. Just clap the flower." And Myra's eyes flooded with tears. Good tears. Healing tears. Tears that she had needed to cry for a very long time. And she clapped the flower. And they both laughed. And the woman, as old as time, but as alive as ever, said words that felt as bright as the sun, words even more ancient than the prophets. As a mother comforts her child, so will I comfort you. And then Myra woke up. She walked into the bathroom, and she looked in the mirror. The face in the mirror usually looked so far away, like someone watching someone else. But not today. She felt seen. She felt cared for. She was not alone. She clapped her hands, and a smile broke across her face, and a laugh. And she saw that same smile. She saw that same sparkle in her own eyes. What she had always been seeking was coming through her, flowing out of her. One more story. Our gospel story today. Luke 10:38. Now as they went on their way, Jesus entered a village, and a woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to his teaching. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she went up to him and she said, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are anxious. You're troubled about many things, but only one thing is needed. Only one thing is necessary. Mary's chosen the good portion, which will not be taken away from her. Now, on the surface, this looks like a story about external problems. It looks like a story about who's going to chop the vegetables and stir the soup and bake the bread. And yes, we could look at this story and see Jesus addressing some of the time-bound tensions in his day. Both Martha and Mary, in their own ways, are breaking the gender roles and gender stereotypes of their day. Martha welcomes Jesus into the home, which is the role of a man. Mary sits at Jesus' feet as a disciple, which was unheard of a woman doing, that being in the posture of a learner, a disciple. But the tensions in this story run even much deeper than that. And we come to realize this isn't only Martha's story. This isn't only Mary's story. This isn't only Myra's story. Yeah, sure, everyone has their own story, but these tensions, they persist within my story, within your story. It's the tension that you feel between self-sufficiency and your desire for connection. It's wanting to be impressive and independent. Look, I made the meal, but also not wanting to be alone. It's the experience of feeling like you are pouring and pouring and pouring and wondering, who's pouring into me? It's the tension of wanting to be seen as offering something of value and competence, having people see that you're helpful, having people see that what you do actually matters, while simultaneously feeling unseen, wanting your being to matter. It's the longing to be seen, not in a pressure way, not in a performance way. It's wanting to be seen not for what you do, but simply for who you are. It's about wanting to be in two places at once, wanting to be in the kitchen and in the living room. It's being caught in the constant churn of multitasking and never feeling like you can actually just be present and fully in one place. It's knowing that quality time is important, but also feeling like if you don't keep everything running, everything's going to fall apart, and feeling like a failure either way. It's the trapped feelings that come out of you as you try to control everything in your external world, trying to tell your Marys what to do, trying to have Jesus tell Mary what to do, but none of it is actually about your external world. It isn't about the bread and the soup and the vegetables. It's about your own internal world. We all want life's solutions to be external, but that kind of work is sometimes easier than the internal work. So what is Jesus saying? Well, I'm not sure that Jesus is telling Martha that she just needs to come sit down at his feet next to Mary and listen to him. In fact, I'm pretty sure that if Martha sat down at Jesus' feet, she would be just as frazzled and anxious and fragmented as she is in the kitchen, if not even more so. So when Jesus says that one thing is needed, I don't think that means that Martha needs to fit herself into the Mary cookie cutter and be just like Mary. Jesus certainly affirms that he doesn't want to fit Mary into the Martha cookie cutter and send her away into the kitchen. Jesus says that what Mary has chosen is good, but he doesn't tell Martha that what she has chosen is bad. I don't think Jesus is looking for an external solution here. He speaks a much deeper word. So I want to invite you to hear that word, not just for Martha, not just for Myra, but for you. And it might help you to even close your eyes here. Jesus comes to you in his own slow, deliberate way, and he speaks your name to you slowly deliberately. And it's not because he's correcting you. It's because he wants to reconnect you to who you truly are. He speaks your name because he's telling you you are seen. I see you. He wants to slow you down from the hamster wheel of trying to prove yourself to yourself or to someone else. He wants to slow you down from the defense system that has to constantly be turned on, detecting threats, drawing your sword. He begins naming your emotions to you, all the layers of what you've been chasing and running from, all the noise, all the inner clamor, the fragmenting, the disquiet, the anxiety, the confusion, the care, the burdens, drawing your sword, fight, the flight, the freezing, the inner critic talk, and the self-condemnation. Jesus isn't naming your emotions in an accusatory way. He's naming your emotions in a healing way. This is the pain that has not been attended to, but it's there. And it's okay to face it. It's okay to make that awful, vomiting, gasping, retching noise at it. And all that pain is somehow summed up in one thing that is needed. The one thing that's needed isn't a reference to something that Jesus needs. It's a reference to something that Martha needs, and Myra needs, and you need. It's a reference to your own woundedness, to your own running and chasing and escaping, your own story of what you did need but didn't receive. And it looks different for each and every person. It's your own deeply personal version of seeking those sparkling eyes and that warm smile. And Jesus reaches out his hand and he touches your hand and speaks a word of peace, of healing, of integration into all of your woundedness and fragmentation, your inner war. He touches the one thing that is needed, the one thing that nobody else can touch. Jesus invites you into wholeness, into an inner life that is no longer at war, fragmented, drawing your sword, running, chasing, fleeing. That smile that you're seeking isn't given to you after you make just the right meal. It doesn't come from a place of pressure or performance. It comes before any performance. It's the cloud of flower dancing across the sun rays. It's accepting that you are seen and delighted in before you do any work, any service. And maybe you will go back into the kitchen and maybe you won't. But whatever you do, the source of your activity has been freed and healed. The work and activity that you offer to the world can come freely from a different place inside of you, a place of peace and wholeness and integration. You don't have to chase that special smile on someone else's face because it has already been given to you and it is being given to you. And that smile is on your face, not because it is coming from you, but because it is shining through you. It comes from the most timeless and tireless smile of all creation. Before any baking, before any work, before any performance. And God saw all that he had made, and it was very good. You are my beloved, whom I love, whom I have always loved, whom I always will love. Clap the flower. Rather than giving Jesus our bread, our cookies, we ended our time of worship on Sunday with an opportunity to receive bread from Jesus. The Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took bread. And when he had given thanks, he broke it and he said, "This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, after supper, he took the cup, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it, in remembrance of me. This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." This is Jesus saying to you, I see the one thing you need. I see all your hunger and thirst, all your woundedness, all the voices in your head swirling around you, causing you to be confused about your identity. I see all the ways you've been reaching and trying to satisfy that hunger and thirst, trying to feel regulated, trying to feel safe. This is my body. This is my humanity given for you. This is me entering into all your struggle. This is me coming under all of your sin, all your attempts to meet legitimate needs in ways that are not truly healing, helpful, and whole for you. And this is me releasing you from your greatest failures. This is me coming under the weight of evil that crushes this world in a million ways. That weight took me to the bottom, into death, but that evil cannot destroy me. I am love that is stronger than death. And this is my heart beating for you. You are forgiven. This is my promise. Nothing can take my love away from you. Nothing. This is me understanding the depths of the one thing that you need. Take it in. Drink it in. Chew on it. Metabolize it. Thank you for joining us for a Sunday sermon from Netart's Friends Church. We hope you'll join us soon for one of our in-person worship gatherings. For more information, hop on over to netartsfriends.org. God's peace be with you, friends.